Welcome to The Poetry Joint, a CJSW podcast production about poems, poets, and poetics. I'm your host, Stephen Donahue. Away we go. This episode will take a look at a small-town Alberta poetry success story. The Parkland Poets Society grew out of a community effort in Stony Plain, Alberta. Recently, I had a conversation with some of the movers and shakers who created this society, and I learned a little bit about how it came about. I talked with their president, Carolyn Cordell, Vice President Joe Saunders, and member-founder Lisa Mulroney. Here is some of that conversation.
Get that out of the way at the beginning.
Parkland Poets, how long have you been going?
2018, January 27th.
It was Robbie Burns Day. For those of us who were interested in poetry, we were having to drive into the city every week, and there wasn't really a venue for us to get involved with, specifically with poetry. Carolyn and I took the leap and decided to see what would happen. And actually, I blame my dad because I mentioned to him that we were interested in starting a poetry group, but I mentioned it in passing, not very seriously. And my dad took it upon himself to go to Stony Plain Library and talk to Alison, who was the director at the library at the time. So really, it's a testament to what libraries do, because Alison said, yes, right away, let's make this happen. Without us being even quite ready to do it, we were doing it.
Why poetry?
Do we all have a turn?
Sure.
I can start. I remember being read to as a child. My mom would read to me. There's one specific poem, actually, that I think sparked my interest, and I don't know if you know it. It's The Spider and the Fly. Will you walk into my parlour, said the spider to the fly. 'Tis the prettiest little parlour that you ever did spy. And on it goes about how the spider lures the fly. And it's quite brutal, really, when you think back to it. But that poem is 200 years old. And I think it was the rhyme that got me interested. And when you can work that magic yourself, and you start doing that when you're at school, teachers encourage you to weave rhymes together. I think that's how I discovered the magic of poetry.
I remember immersing myself in cassette tapes of storybooks when I was a child. We would get like Disney stories that came with a cassette for a read-along, and they would have nursery rhymes on them or in them. And some of them were put to music, but I remember the experience of listening to a reading of a nursery rhyme or a poem or song lyrics in a way that wasn't what you were led at daycare or the way that your parents would sing a nursery rhyme with you in a childish way. It was something else. I was talking to my kids about it the other day, actually, because they were sick and they asked me if I would sing to them. And I don't normally sing, but the very first song or poem I remember hearing on those cassettes as a child was Loch Lomond, which is a traditional Celtic song. And the lyrics of that have stuck with me since I was about 5 years old or 6 years old. And that's what I sing to my kids when they're not feeling well. It's just so visual. It creates something in your mind. Poetry has the ability to take you to a place that you've never been, but can still feel like home. It's just the way that the words are pulled together is different than prose. It's different than our everyday communication. I've kind of hung on to that my whole life. Poetry was a refuge for me in my, turbulent teenage years. Finding the Parkland Poets Society when I moved to Stony Plain 4 years ago, probably the most wonderful group of people, most incredible addition to my life. It's being able to discover people who love poetry, finding Lisa and Carolyn, and the people that they've pulled together.
I wasn't as drawn to poetry as either Joe or Lisa. My poetry experience was high school, and just get through it as quickly as you can. But I met Lisa at Toastmasters. We struck up a friendship. She took me to the Stroll of Poets. So the first time I went was just after my husband had died. And some of the poetry that was read there was so moving and incredible. I just got drawn into it. And I'm the one who, when Lisa said, we should start a poetry group in Stony Plain, do you want to do it? And of course I said yes. I just thought I was kind of coming along as her support. As I've gotten into it more and more, it really is, it's incredible. The words that people say really touch me. And more than that, it's how we touch other people.
We'll take a little break from the conversation and have a poem that Joe Saunders provided.
I was given a writing prompt by my daughter 3 years ago to write a poem about the dark eye of night. And for 3 years, I have not been sure what the dark eye of night means to me, and so I haven't written the poem. And then a friend upped the challenge for me and pointed out that dark eye of night is 14 letters, which means I could make an acrostic structured poem in the form of a Shakespearean sonnet. And so that's what I managed to put together here, sort of a fun thing to write. So this is an acrostic Shakespearean sonnet titled Dark Eye of Night. Draped by indigo black velvet curtains, against the luminous silver white snow, rests the heart of cold winter uncertain, keeping beat at the breast of moon's glow. Every beast lumbers now toward slumber, yet drawn are the women to moonlit pools. Every mother's daughter unencumbered of discontent and harsh daylight rules. Find them there in the snow in their night dress, never chilled, no, they've fire in their veins. In the gaze of the moon they have been blessed. Goddess remembers and calls each by name. Here gather wisdom, truth, justice to fight, those bold daughters of the dark eye of night.
Parkland Poets hosts 2 poetry readings every month. On the 4th Thursday of the month, they host an in-person reading at the Stony Plain Public Library at 7:15 p.m., open and free to everyone to attend. On the second Thursday of every month, they host an online Zoom meeting starting at 7 p.m. The first part provides 3 featured readers reading a selection of their poems, followed by a second part, which is an open mic, and people are provided 2 minutes each to read a poem of their choosing. Again, the meeting is open and free. It was through the Zoom meetings that I became aware of Parkland Poets. How does your Zoom meetings differ from, say, your other monthly readings in the library? Or does it differ?
It does differ in that when we come together, we have more of a chance to share one-on-one personally. When the Zoom, obviously, if we're chatting on Zoom, we're chatting with everybody. And so it's nice to have that time with people individually to be able to talk to them and find out more about them and really get that personal touch. The Zoom touches so many people that can't be with us. Like you mentioned, Scott, who can't be with us in person. Joy, who's been on the board since the beginning, who now can't get out. And just to know how important that Zoom meeting is to those people. That's how we met Hiram and Margaret, who was the mic host at the last meeting.
We only ever met in person, and then COVID suddenly hit. And actually, I remember being home sick and tinkering around on my computer thinking, how can we still meet? And there were a few platforms available at that time that you could use to meet virtually, but nobody had ever heard of any of them, including Zoom. So I just randomly picked one. It happened to be Zoom, and we experimented with it, and it worked. And the next thing you know, everybody was using Zoom, becoming more familiar with it. We actually pride ourselves on the fact that Parkland Poets never missed a reading. COVID hit and our readings continued. But what happened was throughout COVID, we attracted a different audience. We attracted people from further afield. And then those people wanted to still keep attending. And of course, like Carolyn mentioned, there were people who weren't able to reach us for one reason or another. And this way we were able to keep the community going even after everybody was able to return and meet in person once again. So we have a very large community now. And in a way, we have almost two different kinds of readings, because there are those people, a very local community that can come, and then a more global community that attends the Zoom. Our poets talk to their friends. Also, we've been active on Facebook, and it seems that a lot of poets are also looking around for community on Facebook. Yeah, I don't know if you guys wanted to add to that, Carolyn and Joe, but I think largely we are word of mouth.
Yeah, it's been word of mouth almost exclusively up until recently, actually, just in the last 3 months or so. We've got 2 members of our board that have volunteered to take the position of being sort of readings coordinators / international correspondent to try to get word out about our Zoom readings a little bit further. And that has worked better than we expected, I think. We've got our featured reader slots for both in-person and Zoom reading is booked up until next summer already. We've got to open up the schedule going into next season now. And we've got readers scheduled to join from Australia, from more than a dozen different states in the USA, from Nepal, from everywhere, from all across the globe. I think a lot of it is still word of mouth, but there is a deliberate effort now as well to expand it and get more international voices on our Zoom calls.
A couple of poems from Zoom readers of the past and future.
I'm Hiram Larew from Maryland, USA, and I'm reading a poem about gratitude that first appeared in Poetry Bus. The title is Wilt or Stray. I am incredibly lucky. Even this haze knows it. Even my useless gaze says so in every way. To be where I am now, living like this, is like cherries on a branch. In fact, I'm not nearly grateful enough for this mud and for its reasons. Not thankful enough for fences down or kinked hoses. No, I don't deserve porches. In fact, I need to tip my hat in love and honor to every buzzing swarm that's coming at me, to any wilt or stray. And I should surely thank my lucky stars, my blessings, for what last night had its way with the row of beans out back in the garden.
Next, a poet and storyteller from Portland, Oregon, Margaret Saraco.
Mama often told us a story about a family that lived near her during the Great Depression. She was a child like me when I first heard it. Our front doors were never locked growing up, Mama said, every time there was a burglary, break-in, or when we ate chicken for dinner. He stole a chicken to feed his family. Everyone was poor. We all were, if only he asked. We always shared what little we had. They arrested him, put him in jail for years. It wasn't right for stealing one chicken. Back then, immigrants could not stand up for thieves or speak on their behalf if they were in custody. Interference meant arrest. She did not mention his name nor what became of him or his family, though we asked every time. I haven't eaten chicken in more than 50 years. We bolt our doors day and night. The car in the driveway has an alarm. What would it take to feel safe enough? It seems we will never embrace what is mine is yours, what is yours is ours. I unlock my house today, open the front and back doors, pull aside the curtains, and throw open the windows, allowing fresh air to cleanse in a complex world.
Among the features the Parkland Poetry Society offers members is the opportunity to be published in their yearly poetry anthology titled Outlying Voices. They talked a bit about that and other local activities the Society gets involved in.
We've had our anthology since the first year. I think by the end of the first year, we decided to start asking our poets if they'd like to contribute to a book. And so that's one of those popular things that we do. Everybody likes to have an opportunity to share their words and get them out there. So definitely, I think the anthology will continue. We've done some interesting things with anthologies in the past, and I'm sure we will again in the future. I know one of our past anthologies, we had QR codes on each page, so a person could use their phone to scan the page and then actually hear the poet reading the poem while they read the text. So that was exciting, and there have been lots of projects that have involved the community. A few of them have been online, like Poetry in Your Pocket, where we've been able to have poets contribute to an online collection of poetry, again, where people can listen to the audio. Joe has ran a few courses for children at the library.
The efforts of the board and the membership during COVID to continue to maintain the community and pull together to do activities. Like there were a few others. There were poetry postcards one year. It's impressive, really. I had settled down and the adjustment had already sort of taken place, and we were returning to in-person readings for 50% of our schedule. My first question when I joined the board was actually, what's our goal here for the society? Are we looking to increase our membership base and get new voices and experiences, or do we want to increase the engagement of our existing membership base? And I was told by the board, we want to do both. And so we're kind of heading in that direction now, where we're making efforts to do that. As Lisa mentioned, we've run a couple of youth poetry writing programs in partnership with the Stony Plain Public Library. We had 9 in the first and 6 in this latest class, and they're youth aged 10 to 15. They're having a blast. They're so creative. It's so much fun. And they're taking poetry back to their families. You know, they're excited to go home and go, look what I wrote. Listen to this. They're practicing their public speaking and getting confident in themselves and their voices through that. It's wonderful. We participate in Alberta Culture Days every year. That's through the month of September across all of Alberta. The last 3 years, we've done a poetry treasure hunt around Old Town Stony Plain. We partner with local businesses and the town to pick some points of cultural interest around Stony Plain, and participants follow poetry clues and do poetry challenges at each location in order to complete the treasure hunt and return to the library for some snacks and be entered for a prize package. And it's fun. And that gets us out with the regular community at large, and not just working with our members who are already enjoying poetry. We just got an email this week, actually, from Alberta Culture Days and the town, and notifying us that Stony Plain was named one of the top performing or top participating mid-sized communities in Alberta for Culture Days and our efforts. We're trying to do a lot more pop-up poetry events as well, which is our in-person readings, but taking them off of our regular schedule and into venues where poetry isn't normally experienced. So we've met up at a small tea house for poetry, and they marketed it to their regular customers, and we had 14, 15 people show up who had never come to one of our readings before. But they came and they brought their own poetry and they read for the very first time in their lives. And it was wonderful. We had one at a local bird feed store in Spruce Grove. But it had a great turnout. Again, they advertised it to their regular clientele. And most of the people who came were first-time readers who had never attended a poetry reading before. And they had a wonderful time. So,
you know, we were surprised at the very beginning that there were as many people in the community already who were writing poetry and enjoying it. They just didn't have a venue or a place to share that and to acknowledge their interest. So Parkland Poets gave them that outlet, and more and more people come out to every event depending on where it's being held, and people talk to one another. It's always surprising. There's such an interest out there. I did a project during COVID actually with the town where we talked to members of the town, members of the community, asking them how poetry existed in their world. So people who were not poets. And it's surprising how many people really do engage with poetry. They maybe don't write it themselves, but they take a genuine interest. Carolyn has mentioned that she herself is not a big writer, but she enjoys listening to it and she enjoys hearing it. And I think that's also an audience that we want to reach out to. You don't just have to be a writer of poetry in order to participate in our readings, to come out to the library and attend one of our meetings. People who appreciate poetry and just want to hear it and enjoy it. It really is a great way to hear people expressing themselves and really to know that you're not alone in the things that you feel and the things that you experience. Somebody can articulate those experiences for you if you're not a great poet yourself, and you can still feel that sense of community.
That's the only place I'll ever be published is in our anthologies. And I haven't always submitted because I'm not really a writer of poems, and it's not. I'm more passionate about making sure that we continue with our readings. That's really what really keeps me going, is that we need to keep our readings going because they do me a lot of good, and I know other people have said how much it means to them. So that's more me. I will never be a published poet.
Let's see if we can fit in a poem here from Lisa Mulroney.
To my children. I loved you before you were born, before you were even conceived. I loved the idea of you, a tiny human whose being could change the entire course of history, whose being would change me. You taught me how to be human myself, appreciate that survival is always about loss, how the potential for loss makes us breathe deeper, look longer, slow down and hold tighter. You made sacrifice a thing of beauty, every burden and every misery borne gladly, blistering my hands on second-hand gardening tools, turning the earth to grow the most delicate flowers. When you are grown, I shall look upon your petals, those blooming, those withered, and those fallen, and I shall know that the tiny veins carrying sunlight to your core still carry the best part of me within you, the part that knew you before you were born, the part that loved you even before you were conceived.
Another poet, Aspen Grove, with the poem 11:50 p.m. on Mount Rainier.
Twice the person you were 3 days ago, that makes 5. There's a tired gaze stitched into every morsel of sunlight that crawls in through the window. Still, 5 times it was easier said than done, and remain. Sunlight crawls in through the window. So the floor lilts underfoot like some heaving giant breathing in slumber. Never went back. Stick to your guns. 5 times it was easier said than done. Now the days pass by like the water that flows down into Puget Sound. It's a deeply unstoppable thing, necessary. There's only one lesson to be learned here. Reality is this. After a loved one dies, time does not wait for you. After loss, the grass will waken green. On close inspection, drivers and joggers outside are not crying. Sun goes up and on until night. Theory is this. Pando is an aspen tree system in Utah. There are over 47,000 trees growing at once, all one single organism, communicating, sharing. When an aspen is cut down, it sends out a signal, letting the rest know of danger. There is nothing a tree can do to stop an axe swing, yet closure for the unstoppable is often necessary. Hypothesis is this. Perhaps in holding hands, our root systems run deep down, closing loops with silent words. Everything with life reaches out in one way or another. See your face? Look at mine. The axe comes like water, streaming down into Puget Sound, grasping hands like roots. The warning could come when you least expect it. 5 times, it was easier said than done.
We'll get some final words from Carolyn, Joe, and Lisa.
I would encourage people to not be shy about attending. We have a lot of people who come for the very first time, and maybe they wonder if it's the right place for them. You know, maybe they're beginners when it comes to poetry, or would like to write poetry but never really have, or just wondering what kind of people show up at a poetry reading, and maybe that feels intimidating. And I would encourage them to give it a try, and what will happen more than likely is you will find yourself at home. You will find a community of people who are warm, welcoming, and really open to hearing any kind of poetry, whether you're a beginner or a professional. And we just enjoy having people come along, and even if they're just audience members and want to listen. So I would encourage people to not be intimidated about giving it a try if they're first-timers and wondering whether a poetry reading is for them. They're welcome. You don't have to be a member to attend. We encourage you to become a member if you like what you see, but come along and just experience it and see if you find your people, and I'm sure you will.
I think you just have to get rid of that feeling, because everybody appreciates hearing poetry from everybody. And I agree, all of our featured readers are amazing. But then when we have the open mic, it's wonderful too. And it's wonderful to hear people's words. And I often think poetry's like music. You know, not everybody likes the same music. Not everybody will like the same poem, but that doesn't matter. That you're touching somebody.
And poems are often a work in progress. I think reading them at the open mic gives you an opportunity to hear your own poem aloud in performance, and you'll realize, oh, this is something that I'll want to change. This is something that I'll want to fix. It didn't quite roll off the tongue the way I expected it to. So it's a good place to try out your draft.
That's one of the things that I work with the kids on in the youth writing program, is they have to read their poems out loud, because when you read it on paper, it reads one way. When you have to say it aloud, it takes on a different life, and you start to discover your own voice. For myself anyway, it gets easier in time. The more you read aloud your own words, the easier they come on the page the next time you pick up the pen. Yeah, parklandpoets.com. And we did give it an overhaul earlier this year. So all of the information on it is current. The link to our Zoom meetings is right there on the website, and link to sign up as a featured reader or get more information as well is all on there.
This has been the Poetry Joint. Thank you for listening. Back again in a month's time. The Spider and the Fly, a fable by Mary Howitt. Will you walk into my parlour? Said the Spider to the Fly. 'Tis the prettiest little parlour that ever you did spy. The way into my parlour is up a winding stair, and I have many pretty things to show when you are there. Oh, no, no, said the little Fly, to ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can ne'er come down again. I'm sure you must be weary, dear, with soaring up so high. Will you rest upon my little bed? Said the Spider to the Fly. There are pretty curtains drawn around. The sheets are fine and thin, and if you like to rest a while, I'll snugly tuck you in. Oh, no, no, said the little Fly, for I've often heard it said, they never, never wake again who sleep upon your bed. Said the cunning Spider to the Fly, Dear friend, what shall I do to prove the warm affection I've always felt for you? I have within my pantry good store of all that's nice. I'm sure you're very welcome. Will you please to take a slice? Oh, no, no, said the little Fly, kind sir, that cannot be. I've heard what's in your pantry, and I do not wish to see. Sweet creature, said the Spider, you're witty and you're wise. How handsome are your gauzy wings, how brilliant are your eyes. I have a little looking-glass upon my parlour shelf. If you step in one moment, dear, you shall behold yourself. I thank you, gentle sir, she said, for what you're pleased to say, and bidding you good morning now, I'll call another day. The Spider turned him round about and went into his den, for well he knew the silly Fly would soon be back again. So he wove a subtle web in a little corner sly, and set his table ready to dine upon the Fly. Then he came out his door again, and merrily did sing, Come hither, hither, pretty Fly, with the pearl and silver wing. Your robes are green and purple, there's a crest upon your head. Your eyes are like the diamond bright, but mine are dull as lead. Alas, alas, how very soon this silly little Fly, hearing his wily, flattering words, came slowly flitting by. With buzzing wings she hung aloft, then nearer and nearer drew, thinking only of her brilliant eyes and green and purple hue, thinking only of her crested head. Poor foolish thing! At last up jumped the cunning Spider, and fiercely held her fast. He dragged her up his winding stair, into his dismal den, within his little parlour, but she ne'er came out again. And now, dear little children, who may this story read, to idle, silly, flattering words, I pray you ne'er give heed. Unto an evil counsellor close heart, and ear, and eye, and take a lesson from this tale of the Spider and the Fly.